When I was younger, you couldn't tell me anything about the mental side of things. I thought it was all about skill, all about athleticism. If a player is better than you, well, it's probably because they're more skilled or they're just more explosive or a better athlete. And because of this, I never worked on my confidence. I never worked on the mental tool side of things. I never worked on any of this, and I had so much potential that was just held hostage up here. And I never want the same for any other athlete again. And as I've been blessed to travel the world and work with thousands of athletes, from young players all the way up to NBA players, I've seen how much the mental side of things can affect your game, both positively and negatively. So in this video, I'm gonna give you guys a number of different perspective shifts that if you're able to make these, it's gonna completely change the way you, number one, see the game, number two, the way you think about the game, and most importantly, how you perform on the court as a result of how strong your mind can be. And if you want a blueprint, a daily way to work on these things, make sure to check out the Mental Skills program in the Virtual Academy. It's got meditation, it's got mental challenges, it's got daily on-court workouts that you can do for up here. It's gonna help you unlock all of that potential that's being stifled by what's going on up in your brain. So the first perspective shift I want you guys to make is always playing to win. And you may be like, okay, coach, I already do that. Like, I love to win. I always play to win. But I think we'd all be surprised at how much we play at times not to lose. For example, if you're taking that last shot of the game, you can either shoot that shot in one of two ways. Number one, it's shooting it to win. You're not caring about what can go on if you miss. You're not thinking about any of the implications of missing that shot. You're like, all right, let me make this shot and win. And that's what the most confident players do. That's what the most clutch players do. But if you start overthinking it, you start thinking about all the negative consequences of losing that game or missing that shot, that's when you start playing not to lose. And it's not just these game winners or end of game situations. I know so many players who play not to make a mistake versus playing to win or versus playing to play well. And this isn't easy, especially when you have a coach or teammates or people who are putting pressure on you to play well. But once you start to push out all of the negative thoughts of what could happen if you don't play well and just start thinking about what's the next positive thing you can do, it's gonna change everything. You're gonna overthink less, you're gonna do everything more confidently, you're gonna look more confident. And a lot of this comes from putting it in perspective, like, okay, even if this goes wrong, what's the worst that could happen? Maybe I get taken out of the game, maybe I feel bad that night, maybe I get yelled at, but am I even gonna remember this in a few years? And once you realize that, you're gonna start playing to win a lot more. Number two, I want you to start thinking more in small goals. Obviously, it's good to have big goals. You wanna make this team, you wanna average X amount of points, you wanna become this type of player. But I think a lot of players get so focused on what's in the distance, those really massive goals, that we lose track of these small goals that help us get there. So if you're like, okay, I wanna average 15 points a game this season, that's your big goal. Once you have that, it's time to start reverse engineering it so all these little small goals are the ones you focus on. So maybe this includes 5 days a week working on your shooting ability because you know that this is one way that's gonna help you get there. Maybe this is getting 4 points a quarter, right? If you get 4 points a quarter, that adds up to 16 points a game. That's a lot more manageable to think about versus just thinking about this big goal that almost seems unattainable at times. Maybe you start thinking, okay, if I wanna get to 15 points a game, I also have to stay healthy so I can play more minutes. I'm gonna spend X amount of minutes in the weight room this summer, focusing on my body, making sure that I'm reducing the chance of injuries. And for the pros that I've worked with who focus on these quarter by quarter or really small goals, even within the game, maybe it's getting 2 back cuts per quarter, maybe it's getting 5 rebounds per half, just something super simple and digestible, helps them end up reaching these big goals a lot easier. Number 3, I want you to stop focusing on nerves and start focusing on excitement. So what I mean by this, and I have a whole nother video on this topic, so if you want the entire thing, you can go watch this, but this same feeling that we get when we're nervous and we're anxious and maybe our palms are sweating and our heart's starting to beat kind of fast and we feel nervous. This is the same feeling that you get when you're excited. Really, that's all it is. It's just our reaction to something that we care about. What makes it nerves is when we call it nerves, when we appraise this as nerves, which is a bad thing. But when we say, okay, look, I'm excited about this. This is just my body's natural response to something that I'm passionate about and that I'm ready for. That's really all it is, just our body getting us ready for war, essentially. That's when you're actually able to use this physiological response to your advantage. And there are plenty of studies on this that literally will show, like, by saying, quote unquote, I'm excited, or I'm ready for this, or whatever it may be out loud, this actually helps you perform better in that game, in that interview, in whatever you're nervous for. So don't think nerves, think excitement. Next, I want you to stop thinking about technique so much and start thinking about outcome. So when we think about our technique, when we think about our elbow or our wrist or something internal, this is called an internal focus of attention. In other words, we're focusing on a joint or a body part or the movement of those. And this has been documented in science and by athletes in every single sport to decrease your performance performance, especially when it's crunch time. By thinking more externally or focusing on the outcome of it, you're gonna boost your performance, you're gonna be more efficient, and you're gonna be able to perform in these big moments because you're not overthinking and thinking about every little movement. So an external focus could just be shooting the ball up. I have players that overthink every single shot. They think about where their elbow should go or whether they should be thumb flicking or all these different things in their shot. And when I tell them, hey, just shoot a little bit higher than the last shot, or pretend like there's a mountain that you have to shoot over, many times this automatically fixes it because that's switching their focus from internal to external. It's the same thing if you're dribbling the ball, right? And you're focusing on every single dribble, where you're stepping, etc. If you shift your focus of attention to just getting into that space that you see over there, now that's an external focus and your body's gonna take care of the rest. That's what you've trained for. So stop focusing so much on your technique, on how your body is moving, and more on what tasks you have to execute. Next one is start thinking about, instead of what's the toughest bucket that you can get, what's the easiest bucket that you can get? Especially what's the easiest bucket you can get for your team. A lot of the time we make the game tougher than it needs to be. Trust me, I'm a victim of it. I love getting tough buckets off the dribble. But when you start thinking about what's the best shot that I can possibly get, even if that means passing up a decent shot or a decent opportunity, you're gonna find yourself getting a lot easier buckets. So focus more on the cut, focus on attacking these closeouts that you find, focus more on coming off of screens and creating easy advantages for yourself and your team. And then once you create this psychological momentum by getting easy buckets, you're gonna be in the zone, you're gonna be in the flow state, and when that shot clock goes down, now you're gonna be able to take somebody off the dribble, really get in your back. The next big shift is, rather than seeing people, is seeing space. And I briefly mentioned this a little bit earlier, but what the best players do is, rather than thinking about, hey, this defender's right here, they think about the space that's past that defender. They're not worried too much about that initial defender, they're just worried about getting into that space. And when that's the case, you stop overthinking what move you have to make, you stop overthinking all this stuff, and now you get really good at just getting into that space, getting to the rim or getting to a shot, or just drawing in other defenders by getting into open space. This is something that, again, the best players at every level are elite at. It's like a skier, rather than focusing on the trees that you have to avoid, they're just seeing the white space as they're going down the slope. And I've had some players that think about this analogy as they play, and they've seen crazy results. Second to last one here is, instead of going 110% at all times, starting to be a little bit more composed and treating your max as more like a 95% effort or speed. I think a lot of players get super sped up and they think that basketball is just a race to a spot, or a race to the rim, or a race up in the air, when in reality, it's more strategy, it's more composure. And while some players do go at really high speeds and succeed this way because they're the fastest players on the court and this is their advantage, the vast majority of really good players, regardless of their playing style and who they are, you'll rarely see them going at max speed or max intensity. When you go at this max speed, you get tunnel vision, it's harder to finish, harder to pass, harder to control the ball, you get sped up a lot easier, overall just out of control. And when you slow down, you're a little bit more composed, maybe still going 95%, so still pretty fast, but not really full intensity or full speed ahead at all times. Again, you'll start to see a lot more control. Plus, it allows you to move more effortlessly and gracefully, and honestly, more effectively. A lot of the best sprinters even say that they move the best at 95% or 90% effort, because it allows them to just run a little bit more relaxed than creating all this tension that's actually going to slow them down in the long run. And then lastly, and this is something that you don't want to hear, but you have to, basketball does not mean everything in your life. You are not a basketball player. That's not your identity. You are a great human being who plays basketball. And when you treat basketball like everything, it has complete control of you. Your bad games, well, that makes you a bad person. Your great games, well, that's the only time you're gonna be truly happy, is when you have a good game. And I used to be like this, and it ruined me in a lot of ways. But as I started to work on this diligently and realize how much else was out there to life, and started to put basketball in perspective, it actually, funny enough, helped me play better, because I wasn't putting so much pressure on myself to be perfect. Because I wasn't thinking, okay, a bad game equals bad me. It's like, a bad game, it's gonna happen, it's okay. Still have a lot more to live for than just basketball. And also, as I touched on earlier, you're probably not even gonna remember a bad game or a turnover in the next 6 months, let alone 5 years down the line. Everybody turns the ball over, everybody has bad games, everybody has bad shooting nights. But what separates the best from the worst is if they let that affect them on a long-term basis. If you do, it's gonna be tough for you to succeed. If you don't, then you're gonna be aligned with the other elite players of the world who will have their bad games, but they're able to bounce back from it like nothing happened. So hopefully you guys can take these and start to actually work on them and apply these just like you work on your skills on a daily basis. Again, if you want a comprehensive way to work on all these things, make sure to check out the mental skills training program. I'll put that down in the description. But even if not, hopefully this helps a lot. As always, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Until next time.